upstairs in the living room, and my wife hated it because I would record and she had to be quiet, like tiptoeing around it. So she had to like wait by a certain time. So she was like, you got to do this shit upstairs. So I have an empty room that's just a storage room right now. And I did the very first episode I did of the show was like a makeshift like backdrop. And my wife, all credit to her. She did her very best. She's a genius with interior design. I suck. I just put a wall and that's good enough for me.
Yeah.
My wife adds a little more class to it. So she put her setup for thinking they would look good, and it did. But I was like, babes, no offense, but this looks very draining. It's kind of boring. I need more life. And she'll then use our room and use the VHS in the backdrop. I was like, okay, fair enough.
The VHSs, are they just stacked on top of each other, or is it like
they're literally stacked one on top of the other?
That's dope.
Yeah, and I'm surprised they haven't crushed themselves because it's been there for years. So then, like once in a while, I'll pull out a VHS because I still like to watch VHSs. So I'll pull it out, and the only thing that concerns me is, one, is it molded? Thankfully, it's not. Two, it's a smush. Thankfully, it's not. But then I have a hard time remembering where everything's at because they're not organized by any means. They're just like all over the place. There are some sections over here. Like I have a Stallone section right there. And I got a Schwarzenegger section over there. But then I also have a Schwarzenegger section right here somewhere. Van Damme. And
it's organized chaos.
Pretty much, yeah. And you got horror. Like if you look right behind, you can't tell from here, but right behind me, it's literally nothing but horror.
Yeah.
So I've got like horror series from the 70s and 80s that are all stacked right there, half of which I forgot I even had. As a matter of fact, I was actually talking with Glenn not too long ago. I have the Faces of Death series right here on VHS.
I heard that on the last podcast.
You saw that? Okay.
Yeah.
And I've yet to watch all of them.
It's great because you can then like do an actual video of like going through some of them and like, oh, this is what it means and this is why it's here or whatever. Like,
my wife and I were thinking about what she wants to do. This again, my wife handles all this stuff. So we are going to have shelves put up. And I was thinking about doing a video for all the stuff that we're doing to set everything up. Because believe it or not, we have boxes full of toys because we collect toys too. And I'm talking about like toys from like back in the day. You remember like the Marvel Legend figures and DC Universe? Those things? So we still have a lot of those toys that have not been opened up at all. So they're still in the box in the original settings here. So they're still in mint condition.
What's the 40-year-old virgin? Don't compromise the box.
Well, thankfully I wasn't a virgin by that point, but technically I was. But the point is that I have all those boxes still there, and I'll be honest with you, half the stuff I forgot which I've got because there's some stuff that my wife and I look over like we need to get that one. I think we already have it, so we have to like take all the boxes out, look through them all. Like, oh yeah, we already have that one. We didn't get this series over here, but now we don't need that anymore because it's not worth anything, or we don't want it no more. So, like we literally have stuff back there that I'm not too like put myself out there like that, but I can guarantee it's worth like you can put a down payment on a house like on a spot like that. Seriously.
Yeah. I was like, put a down payment on a podcast studio.
I was telling my wife, we might as well just invest right now. And she's like, nope. And I was like, all right, whatever.
Where are you based out of?
I'm Howard in Gastonia, just outside of Charlotte. You ever been out here before?
I've been out to Charlotte, but I've never been out.
Gastonia it's like literally just outside of Charlotte.
Okay.
It's like down the road. I mean, I say that, but it's actually just down the road. It's like, you ever been to DC?
Yes. That's where I live. That's how I know Pat.
Okay. So I was raised in Arlington. So that's the equivalent of Charlotte and Gastonia. So
that close.
It's like that. Yeah. It's like that. It's literally down the road. What part of in Northern Virginia did you live in?
Well, I lived in Silver Spring, but I was at the Silver Spring stop. So literally like half of my parking lot was in DC and the other half was in Maryland.
Do you miss it there?
Not really. DC wasn't my favorite, but
why is that?
The culture was just different. Very transient because people would come in military and just be like, okay, I know I'm going to be here.
So you're probably like, you're because I know what you're talking about. I grew up in Falls Church. And I lived by McLean. I went to McLean High School.
Okay.
So a lot of
fancy.
Well, you think that because I actually, it's weird because I lived in the district where I don't know if you're how familiar with the area, but Falls Church High School was literally on the other side of the road, and I could skip to school basically, right?
But
because I lived on the other side, you got to go to McLean High School, which is like, I don't know, not that far, but I mean, I was like, well, it's more convenient for me. It's just the way the zoning was, whatever it was at that time. I never liked school in McLean. Only I liked who I hung out with, but I just never really liked that environment. So I know where you're coming from with that.
Yeah.
I always felt better with people who were more level-headed when it came to their I guess what's the
Lot in
word?
life,
Yeah,
station. Yeah.
yeah. I like people who are more comfortable with who they were rather than who they were trying to be. And there's a
Yeah.
lot of that in school. Oddly
I
enough,
think
it was
that
always go
I think
on.
that's like kind of like where school, that is the stage in your life where you're supposed to like figure out who you are. And it's a lot of
I never did.
trials
I'm
and
still
error.
trying to figure it out.
What I find interesting about living in the DC area, just generally, I grew up in Boston and
Right.
public schools in Boston. We learn about the Civil War and like
Yeah, yeah,
for whatever reason, you feel like DC and the North were just so far apart. When you go to DC and literally Virginia, the
yeah,
South is like right there. And
yeah.
they never tell you it's like literally you could throw a rock and hit the
I
South.
never felt like I was because technically, if you think about it, I am a Southern kid. I was born in Virginia, raised in there, and I still live in the South because I live in North Carolina. But I never felt like a Southern boy by any means
Mhm.
because I've had like a mixture of like everything.
Yeah.
So every once in a while, I would run across some people who were born and raised in Arlington, Alexandria, or Centerville, whatever else, that were there from like the '60s and '50s, and that were still there to this day. And
Yeah.
I'm like, you guys are like relics, you guys, you're like an anomaly now.
Yeah.
So and when you talk to them, you can still hear that Southern twang left behind. So
Yep.
it's like, I forget that it existed, in that period because, nowadays, I grew up with Black kids, Asian kids, all sorts of Hispanics, Middle Eastern kids. It never felt like a Southern place for me at all. I remember in Centerville, specifically in Centerville, when I was a kid, I remember nothing but farm in Centerville. Centerville was nothing but farms when I was a kid growing up. And then in a matter of like 10, 15 years, it became full of Indians, Koreans. It was just like overnight that
Yep.
it all happened. I was like, holy shit. And they pretty much like, I wouldn't say control the area, but they were pretty much dominant in that area. They almost
Yeah.
controlled the market in a lot of ways.
They say Annandale's like Asian Dale's what they call it, right?
Yeah, it's exactly right. Yeah, a
Yeah.
lot of Koreans out there too. Centerville has a lot of Koreans, a lot of Indians, and Falls Church. I don't remember how Falls Church was. There's a lot of Hispanics, but I never felt like they were in control. We were ever in control at all. It was more like if it seemed like we were there, but I didn't feel that impact we had, like for example, the Koreans had or the
Mhm.
Indians had. It was never like, for some reason, Hispanics were just there, and it's I don't know why we never had that impact in some cultures, because
Interesting.
there were some businesses over there too that a lot of Hispanics have, and
Mhm.
then next thing you know, they were gone and never came back. But meanwhile, the Korean business always stuck around, and they've been there for years, and
I,
they
I
still
feel
they
like
still have a loyal following.
yeah, I feel like that tends to be kind of the Hispanic in America, like the Hispanic trajectory in America. It's like where you don't the niches where you dominate, it's like 100%. Like you could
Yeah,
be, you know, it's dominant, it's prevalent, and then everywhere else, it's like, oh, you're they're there, but it's not like
yeah.
we're just
But you
kind
know
of
what I
there.
but you know what I noticed too, at least in Northern Virginia, whenever I came across a Hispanic family that owned a business, say like in Arlington, there was always that one family that have like a white person in the family that somehow I always felt like, not to say this if it's not to say it's true, but to me it almost seemed as if though my wife is white, therefore what I'm doing here makes me a part of the community. You see what I'm getting at? So
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's almost as if though, I'm not to say every Hispanic does this here, but I have noticed a lot growing up when there is a white person in the family, it's almost as if though they're assimilating with the culture in the United States. Therefore, they are, they're above the rest, if you will. That's kind of the impression that I got with some of them.
I feel like that is very much symptomatic of being in America,
Yeah,
where if you and we can go into the history of that,
yeah,
especially for the Asian American trajectory, the journey. But yeah, I feel like that's very, very common where we are now that much closer to being American. So
yeah,
therefore, we are that step further away from being a foreigner. America likes to hold that line of foreigner
yeah.
and not foreigner.
Yeah, 'cause that's one thing I noticed too. Like for example, like there was, I have a lot of Hispanic people in my family that, that come from the same struggles that people are still going through now, but now they've been passed through that,
Yep.
and it's almost as if though, well, Julio from that neighborhood over here is going through the same struggle as you are. Uh, you know, Julio is
Yeah.
giving us a bad name. I was like, you went through the same bullshit that he went through too. What
Mhm.
makes you much more different than than him?
it kind of reminds me of that, like the paying of dues. When you go to a company, like, oh, you got to pay your dues. Like, oh, so you're just gonna treat me like shit? Just gonna
Right.
be? Did you not forget what it was like to be treated that way,
Yeah.
or because you remember you're allowed to do that to me now? Like, I hate that whole
Well,
structure.
I don't know if you ever seen the movie Layer Cake with Daniel Craig.
Yes, yeah,
So
I just saw it.
okay, so that's for the first time.
Yeah, I know, I know. It's like 2007. I get it, but
2004 to be exact.
oh, I was like, Tom Hardy's like, wow, so thin. What year is
I
this?
know that was
2004.
2004. Yeah, that was one of his earlier roles, and that's he had like a very little part in it, but
3 lines, 4 lines.
something to that effect.
Yeah.
But I remembered him. But the point is that at the end of the film, that movie right there, so like pretty much cemented for me what most people go through when they go through, all the trauma or the hardship, and they get to a certain level. And the guy said,
You're born, you take shit. Get out in the world, you take more shit. Climb a little higher, take less shit. Till one day you're up in the rarefied atmosphere and you've forgotten what shit even looks like. Welcome to the layer cake, son.
and that happens a lot with a lot of the minority groups here too,
Yeah.
Hispanic
Yeah.
culture especially, because that's my background. But I've seen it a lot with Hispanic culture where
Mhm.
they have that sense of like entitlement that I've been through the trenches, therefore I don't have to go through that again. Sure, I get that.
Yep.
But your cousin Julio still needs help. Fuck Julio.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. If he's strong enough to get here, he was strong enough to get here. And you're like, that's not how
Yeah,
that
and
should
then when he
work.
gets here, yeah, sorry, Julio, the house is full right now. You have like 3 bedrooms that are vacant right now. Yeah, but we're not going to let
Yeah.
Julio in there. And and
Yeah.
then there's a whole like religious side of it here too, which they all kind of carry. So that's like the little trump card that they use. No, I'm sorry, not trump card. I would say the that validation card, if you will, of like, hey, this is I am a good like I've seen a lot of that, which is one of my biggest problems with my community, which is that there's a lot of hypocrisy, and I pointed out before with a lot of other people, but it's true, and I've noticed it with other cultures as well too.
Mhm. Mhm.
Although it's not my place to say that, but I have seen enough of that. I've grown up with a lot of Asians as well, where I definitely have seen that separation.
Yeah.
I think
Yep.
more so in some capacity than the Hispanic culture too. Although Hispanics, I feel like they're more vocal, whereas the Asians, from what I remember, they handle it more privately. So how I see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Behind closed doors,
Yeah.
and yeah, but humans are going to be humans. It doesn't matter really what language you speak. So the struggles are the same, but it's like it's just nuanced more. Where it's like,
Yeah.
it's very fascinating to see just generally how people, let's say specifically this, when people come in, immigrate here, and the resources that they have to their disposal. I find that very, very interesting, where there is unwritten laws where you go, okay, I can help you, but I can only help you to this certain extent. And it's very, very
Right.
common. Like, let's say like
Right.
Filipinos or Chinese or Korean,
Mhm.
or, go, oh, okay. But, the more I look at it, the more I feel like, are you guys still in like survival mode? Is that why you're like,
A part of me
you're in a
thinks the
zero
same
sum
thing
game?
too. Yeah. A
Yeah.
part of me thinks the
You've been
same thing.
playing.
You go on. I'm gonna make a job.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just was like, are you playing the zero sum game? You've been playing this zero sum game for so long that you
Yeah.
forgot that you're living in a 5,000 square foot house. Did you forget?
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny too. I'm not gonna name any names here, but I remember.
Patrick, Kuya
No, 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 not at all. No, no, not at all. Glenn Lawrence. No, I'm just kidding. But when I was growing up, there was a lot of things that I was ignorant to, but once I was exposed to it, like I remember being shocked with the amount of hypocrisy that happens a lot within the communities. So like for
Mhm.
example, like for me, when I was growing up, there was someone that I worked with in the Hispanic community that literally told me we're getting paid X amount of money for a job. This was a side job. Literally told me how much we were getting paid. Cool, but don't tell that guy.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
what do you mean? Because I
Yep.
told that guy we're getting paid X amount.
Yep.
And I'm like, why would you do that? And and I'm
Yep.
like, that was so disturbing to me that I couldn't believe, and it didn't even matter we're from the same country. It's just the community in general. I was like, why would you do something like that? Why would you, you know, you know the person is going through some hard, like, and I knew the story. I knew the person's
Yeah.
story. I had conversation with them. You know, I'm visiting. I'm here so I can get some money, bring my family. I get that. My parents went through the same thing too. I know what's going on. But this one person is going to short them of the money that could really help them. You know, that extra couple $100 or whatever the case may be. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
why would you do such a thing like that? That's so wrong. I mean, has the person changed? My opinion, no, because they literally told me they haven't changed. So,
Yeah.
you know, but then again, if you confront them about that, this is the part that also pisses me off too. I never said that. Do you have proof? So it becomes a lot of he said, she said. And that happens so much in this community, with my community, which is shameful because, you know, everyone has this sense of pride about where they come from, but they criticize each other's culture for the very same things that they're doing too, that I've seen happen, you know, within, you know, all different backgrounds. So I used to be of the I used to be on the mindset that I love and I'm proud of who I am and I'm part of my lineage or whatever the case may be. But the more I started realizing it, maybe people will disagree with me on this here. Honestly, to me, that's all bullshit. And I say that because, you know, I've met a lot of people who, for example, that are, let's say, Muslim. I met a kid who I was a jerk to when I was in high school. Oh, no, it was middle school. No, it was high school. Yeah, I was in high school. And I was a jerk to that kid. And then the following year, I apologized and he was great with me. And didn't matter to me that he was Muslim, but he was a nice kid and he was from
Yep.
Pakistan, treated me just the same,
Mm-hmm.
despite the fact
Mm-hmm.
that I was a jerk to him. And I had no
Mm-hmm.
good reason to be that way with him.
Right.
So from that experience and then seeing how everyone else reacts, you know, the whole culture thing to me almost makes no difference to me personally because it doesn't. I mean, it's nice to see how people interact with each other based on their background. I appreciate that, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter to me where you're from because you know
I,
bullshit's
I,
still the same wherever you go.
Yeah, I think there's something embedded in our DNA,
You
something
think
that's just
so?
like, yeah, I think so. There's something embedded in our DNA that we have evolved past, but there's still traces of like,
I think it's a lack of education, is my opinion. I mean, don't you think?
no, because if you're an asshole, you're an asshole.
I think I know where you're going with this here, but I don't necessarily agree to that. And I'm overthinking it,
Optimistic?
but
Maybe you're too optimistic.
no, I don't think I'm optimistic. I think I'm overthinking it. Maybe I am. I
Hmm.
don't know because but again, but the point is that I don't think so because I think some people like I unlearned a lot of things.
Hmm.
You know, I'm still not perfect by any means.
But the fact that you have consciously made efforts to unlearn things that you know shouldn't exist,
Right.
that speaks volumes. Where
Well,
some
but
people
yeah, but here's the
just
thing though, you
Mhm,
separating yourself from all that helps it as
mhm,
well too.
mhm, mhm. I think some people are just going to be assholes, and until they get to a point where they go, "Oh, I'm a monster. I'm horrible. I
Yeah.
need to figure out how to undo these things." You know, some people are just assholes, hurt people, and it's this crazy cycle where this guy, sure, he might be an asshole, and he's going to do asshole things. And it doesn't matter if it's in a card game or a grocery store or a parking lot. It doesn't matter.
Right, right.
He's gonna find a way that he's comfortable being an asshole, and he's gonna be that asshole until
Yeah.
I,
I guess so, but I mean, I guess I'm more. Maybe I'm too critical because I'm always of the belief that someone there might be some certain characteristics that are natural for certain people. Like there are some people who are very, you know, they have this aura about them that comes very naturally
mm-hmm,
for somebody. You know, for me, I have to develop that. You know, when I'm doing this here, it took me a long time to get to this point for me to be comfortable to talk with people. Before I'd have been like, so you know, I was horrible, but now I feel like I'm more comfortable with it. Not to say I've gotten better, but I think I've gotten comfortable. But you know, that's something that is a learned behavior that I think people can. For me, I always feel like it's you're taught, and then if you surround yourself with the right people or surround yourself in the right environment, you can learn a lot from that. And also, if you separate yourself from something else, you can actually learn a lot about yourself. Like I've learned a long time ago, once I separated myself from a lot of people that I realized had been clouding my thoughts about how things are traditional and that's just the way things are. When you separate that from central after a period of time, you realize that the things that those thoughts don't apply to anymore because they're not relevant, and
yep,
you realize what works for you and what doesn't work. I mean, I'm sure you've experienced that as well too. I mean, coming from Boston, being around sort of people you've grown up with, and then coming over, going to the West Coast, and then
mm-hmm,
you're now in Las Vegas now too, right?
yeah, yep,
So
yep.
coming, on your own here, there's a lot of things I'm sure you may have picked up along the way that you realize, you know what, that's not going to work for me like it did before.
Yeah, but you gotta be willing to really do a self inventory and just be like, what do I not need? What do I, how do I need to change? But some people just feel like they are their best selves and they don't need to improve. And the way that they're doing things is the best way to do things for them. And those people aren't going to change. I'm okay with being wrong. I'm okay with not knowing.
Here.
I'm okay with growing. And the more I think about things, like, 10 years ago, I was probably a monster. I was probably that douchebag that you see in a bar and you're like, let's get the fuck out of here. I'm sure I could definitely have been that guy at any point. So, and today I just make a promise, like, hey, let me do my best to be a contributing member to society today.
Cheers to that.
Yeah. So fucking, yeah.
What are you drinking right there?
Water.
Oh. So much.
Yeah, fucking water.
I was honestly thinking at one point, when I was doing, I forgot who I was talking to. I remember like, God, I'm so bored of water because, I don't want to, alter myself when I'm drinking, if I'm drinking something else. And I think at one point I was deciding I'm going to put some beer in there and just, have fun with it. And I'm not a bad drunk by any means. I'm actually a really good drunk, but I know that.
I love you, man. I love you. I love you, bro.
Thank you. I love you too. But I'm not a bad drunk by any means, but I do know that when I drink, I won't shut the fuck up. I just will keep going and going. So you think I'm interrupting you now? I'm like, no, Lloyd, listen to me right now. I'm telling you, I know what I'm saying. That's me, but I'm not a bad person. Like I'm actually really jovial. And I think I'm more I already said I'm more talkative, but I think I'm more confident with myself because I know what I feel like. I know what I want to say and I can say it. But for some reason, when I'm sober, I'm like trying to like form my thoughts and like, okay, I'm going to say it like this and then try to coordinate like that. Like I'm like trying to come up with a play by play on how to say things. And then eventually when I come out and say I look like a dumbass and I'm like, all right, just fuck it, just go with the flow. And then that ends up working best for me.
Try to only drink in interviews when we're in the same room because it's a different energy.
I think so.
This is different.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. That's actually the best advice I've ever gotten on this show ever. Seriously. That is the best advice. So kudos to you. Well,
thank you.
So, I asked you to be on the show here because I always like to talk with people who have a lot of interesting things to say. And the first time I actually came across you, believe it or not, was here on NRW because, you're friends with Pat and you've done the NOC interview with him in the past. And that's really when I really started to learn more about you. Then from there, I followed you on YouTube and watching all your postings that you've done. I tried to pick up some of your stand-up, and I couldn't find a whole lot of it on YouTube that I could find outside of your special, which I've seen it on a few times. But
Thank you.
You're welcome. It's actually really funny, which I wanted to get into with you, by the way. But I was trying to find something else outside of that to see what your routine is like, and I've only got a handful of snippets that I come across. And here's the thing: I'm surprised because you're actually really, really funny. And I'm surprised that there's not a lot more material of you out there because apart from that special that you did and the roast that you did for Pat on his birthday, which I thought was fucking hilarious, mind you, which I also want to get into as well because I think you had some of the best jokes of the night, in my opinion.
Thank you.
And you actually, I could see where you're, because I look into your background as far as who you've hung out with as far as comedians concerns. And I was actually very surprised to see that, you've actually been around some heavy hitters as well. But I'm assuming a lot to do with the location that you're at. But at the same time, I'm wondering if that had any major influence on you to, step up your A game, if you will. So like, because I know you were 10 years into the comedy.
So to address like the content, I started comedy 10 years ago and a lot of the OGs, like the mentors, the guys that have been around 10, 20 years before me, they weren't accepting of the new medium forms of online and they would just be like, just be funny. Don't worry about YouTube. Don't worry about Instagram. Just be funny and it'll all sort itself out. And I think that was important, but also it was more like, you got to do both. If you put stuff out, people will find you and that will elevate your game. So I spent the first 10 years just trying to be funny and not really putting anything out. And then during COVID, it was just kind of like, all right, I assume when we get out of here, the world's going to be different. let me just put out the material that I do have, and let me just start this process going forward. And I realized that we just consume comedy different. People love your jokes. They're going to come see you. Before, if people saw your jokes, they don't want to hear the same jokes. It's not music. They don't want to hear the greatest hits. They want to hear new stuff. Oh yeah, I know that joke. But now people want to go to an event. Oh, Loy's in town. Oh, let's go out. Like, even if you do 50% new stuff, 50% old stuff, people just want to be in the room. And I think that is something that we just never really predicted. So I guess I just really started putting stuff out most recently in the last year or so.
Yeah. Well, that's what surprised me about you, because like I said before, you have hold on, I got pizza delivery here.
Oh, hey, what pepperoni? What we got? Oh, that's amazing. And wings.
Yeah, and
That's
the wings
dope.
too. Yeah, it's this place called Enzo's. Thank you, babes. This is the Sicilian. Enzo, for me, look, I love pizza. That's probably my second favorite food in the world. I can never find anything out because I love New York pizza. That's like, I fucking love it. And any place that has roots from that part of the area, and they come down over here, it's very hard to replicate that flavor. Extremely difficult. Yeah.
Coming from Boston, I get it.
Okay, so this is the closest that I've ever gotten to that. And mind you, these guys are from Jersey, so they were able to replicate as close to it as possible. So for me, they're the best pizza in town, and they're actually not far from where I live. They're here in Gastonia, so thank the fuck Christ that they're here, because these guys are fucking amazing, and they make some of the best pizza out there. I gotta admit though, the cannolis are fucking huge. And
say no more. Say no more.
I took one bite. I was like, dude, I'm like going to diabetic shock right now. So, but what I was gonna say, what were we at now? I forgot what we're going.
We were talking about like the beginning of my comedy journey, and just like,
oh, right.
Yeah.
So, I said before, I was looking into your in your comedy routine, and I thought even at one point I thought you probably would be doing some comedy routine through your podcast as well too, which more or less is more commentary than anything else. And here's the thing about podcasts that I'm always kind of like wary of when it comes to one person talking the entire time, because in some cases it can be rather redundant after a while. Someone can just talk and talk and talk. Like, all right, where's this going to go? This is the honest to God truth. I've never gotten that from you. I actually feel like you have a lot going on and you have a lot to say, which is why I really wanted to talk to you. Because, you open yourself up in some tough times, and you were pretty upfront and I can't imagine how hard that is, because I don't know if I tend to believe that I can be pretty upfront, but the things I want to be upfront about involves other people too, which is why I said earlier, there's some people that I know, I'm not going to mention names, because those are the type of stories that I want to share, but that means I have to like X out their names. And I'm like, well, if I can't share the story, then I might as well not tell it.
Right.
Once they're dead, then fuck it. They're, all everything's out the gate at that point. But the point I'm getting at with you is that's why I appreciated your podcast, because I felt like, with some of the hardships you've gone through and some of the, the heartbreaks that you've been dealt with, that you were pretty upfront. And, whenever I talk to guests before they come on the show, usually right before we start recording or after I hit the record, but I always ask, what can we talk about? What can we avoid? What should I avoid? And then most of them were telling me, don't ask about my personal life. Sure, no problem. That's fine.
Right.
Others may be more about, don't ask me about what's going on in production. Okay, well, that's kind of
which makes sense.
Talk to you about.
Yeah.
Right. But, there's a conversation that I want to have with people that I find more fulfilling if they are more open to, in conversing about certain things. And I will respect the person's wishes, and I don't have a problem with it. But, there's it takes a certain type of person to be willing to talk about these things that most people probably would be a little more reserved about. So, when I'm watching for example, one of your most recent one that I came across, where I hope you don't mind me bringing it up here, but you talked about a good friend of yours that had passed away, and you were in a really rough spot, and through the magic of editing, you got up and left, and then came right back. That was actually that particular moment for me personally was kind of hard for me to watch, because, to me, it felt like that, you don't take it wrong when I'm saying this, but it almost seemed like you walked in almost unprepared. You just went for it, and then once you reacted and once you started opening up, it it took you back. It took you, yeah, it took to a place that you you didn't expect, and then you
Yeah.
walked away and you came back, and then you just continued on from there. And then I could almost see that uncomfortableness in the, if you will, that
Yeah.
and I'm saying this in a positive way too, that I appreciate it because it's not an easy thing to do. I learned a lot from you, and I learned a lot about how to communicate uh, through this medium because it's not a very easy thing to
Thank you.
do. No, I really do mean that. I really do. But it's not a very, very easy thing to do. And so I always appreciate people who can do that, but do that openly and honestly. But also at the same time, you're making yourself vulnerable, but it's I think that actually shows a lot of strength in the person. With I think some people may perceive as, well, you probably shouldn't do that. Well, you know what? It takes a lot of balls to do something like that, and most people would not even consider taking the time to open up like that, and that might be very difficult for them. So if anything, you got to give them a lot of credit because when was the last time you decided to open up and and talk about what really bothers you and then learn how to deal with it? So
Yeah, I think I mean
I'll
the
be
whole
tomorrow. I'm gonna be taking a bite of pizza here.
Go.
Wait.
Yeah, I'll talk while you eat. I think the big thing about podcasts was I just need to be a small percentage entertaining. I don't have to be
Right.
funny. I just have to be entertaining. And I just kind of wanted to give people something else, something behind the jokes. And if I document my rise to success or my downfall, whatever
Yeah.
this journey is, I'm giving you as much as I possibly can. And I don't want people to think that comedy is this dark and dreary basement that we all live in, but we do have dark corners.
Yeah.
Robin Williams, like suicide and mental
Yeah.
health is a huge thing. Mental health, nobody wants to talk about.
Yeah.
But for me, I kind of just want to show you like, hey, I'm a person and I know that we all kind of go through a lot of the same stuff. And
Mhm.
let me frame it in a way that let me just frame it in a way that like makes sense and it can entertain you. It's 30 minutes. I talk about 3 or 4 topics,
Yeah.
and this is my life.
Yeah.
Let me just be a solid percentage entertaining, and maybe just I'm not trying to run jokes, but
Mhm.
here is the things that I see. And yeah, when my friend passed, Ryan Demers, I knew I was going to talk about it. I was going to shout out, put his name up there, but the thing about recording and doing very, very little editing, your brain goes in places
You didn't
and you
expect.
kind of just have to, yeah, and you're just kind of going to run
Yeah.
with it because nobody wants a news. If you want to watch a news reporter, news anchor, do news, you can watch the news.
Well, but here's the thing. This is why I really, really dug what you did there because it's one thing to express your feelings, but to do it in a way um, that's coherent. In other words, like
yeah,
to talk about it and be articulate about it and to express it. I mean, yes, you definitely had you pause and you were, kind of going side to side. But that was expected because when I was watching this, I could somewhat figure out that you were still uncomfortable with it, but you were still like it's almost as if you're like, trying to force yourself back into the lane to stay on track with what you're trying to get across here. It's not a very easy thing to do. So, like I said before, there's a lot that I learned from you watching that video that I really did appreciate. I took a lot from. So, but then again, this also points out another thing that I also love about your videos as well too, which you don't do that much anymore. I think the last time you did one was probably over a year ago, if I'm not mistaken, which is your
the reaction. Yeah.
Yeah. The one that I got the most fun out of what you did was when you reacted to Ginger's. What was the name of that song? I forgot the name of that song.
Pisces.
And I know the group very well, but I forgot the name of the song. But I'm watching that, and you know what really where I lost it when you said I'm so turned on
With the music reactions. It was something that I enjoyed doing, and I want to get back into it. It's just a matter of going back to mental health. The way you frame music reactions is you have to be as positive as possible because their fan base is there not because they want to know. They're not there for you. They're there for the band.
Right.
And you get some nasty comments, and
I
it
saw
took me a
them.
little, yeah, and
I
it takes
saw
me a
them.
little while. Um, and the hard thing to explain to those people is like, first of all, you have to pause them, you have to pause the song,
Yeah.
or you're gonna get copyright strike, and then all of those things.
Yeah.
Technically, you have to pause, and technically, depending on the algorithm, depends on how much you have to pause it. But people are pretty nasty. Like, oh, you don't understand George Strait, and I'm like, literally, I put in the title, a comedian reacts. What did you expect me to do? Like, cry because I heard, Amarillo by Morning for the first time? Come on. So
Well,
I did take a little bit of a break.
Well, so let me ask you this here. What's your take on comments? Because for me, I guess because since I'm fairly new to this space here, and I rarely get comments on my videos, but when I do, I'm like, thank you, and then I don't hear anything back after that, which is fine.
Yeah.
But I was always on the assumption that you have to interact. But then I heard something from Joe Rogan where he's like, "Fuck that! I'm not responding to anybody's comments, or because it's a negative cesspool. People are just gonna say shit that is irrelevant, and they if they're taking the time out of their day to shit on what you do, that means they're too much of a fucking loser to take time to look at themselves and fix their own problems, and then look at somebody else and say, well, fuck you, you're a loser. Well, then fuck you, because I'm doing what I want to do, and I know I'm having fun with it, and I know I'm much better than you are because you can't do what I do. That's a good mindset to have to a point, but
He's right. He's right, and he's wrong.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
So
that's like saying, it's like Michael Jordan saying, "Oh, just dunk the ball, just shoot the three." You're like, well, I'm not at that level. Like, I can't. Like, I for the algorithm and the way things are set up, if I want to be successful, then yeah, you do have to make those comments. You do have to read, and a lot of times, you just go, hey, thanks for watching. Like, I kind of give that, like, you're stupid, you don't understand. Oh, thanks for watching, I appreciate you. Just trying to turn that cheek just to put that extra comment. So if 10 people comment and then you respond, then you have 20 comments, and apparently the algorithm likes that more. But
oh man. So it's not really about negative or positive, it's more about who gets the most.
Yes. So now you go, oh, you got 100 views, but now you have 20 comments, which looks better than, I don't know, 200 views and 5 comments. So it's like you're playing this game, and if they're nasty, for irrelevantly nasty, just being like, your face is dumb, I'll delete it. But if they're like, hey, you're stopping too much or whatever it is, then I'll go, hey, thanks for watching, I appreciate your time, blah, blah, blah. What song do you recommend? Trying to get them to comment again. So therefore now I've got 30 comments. It's
Right.
the dumbest thing. But Joe Rogan is right. You shouldn't read the comments. If I was at the level of Joe Rogan, where Joe Rogan can put out a video and it'll have 100, a million views,
in like a
I wouldn't read the comments either.
Yeah.
Could you imagine 100,000 views in the first hour?
Joe Rogan's got fuck you money. He's got that money where he's like, I can shit on the sidewalk and no one's going to tell me twice, tell me to wipe my ass, because I'll do whatever I want.
Right.
Probably wipe with his $100 bill at that point.
And that's a great place to be. But for us, you can't, all of your moves can't be boss moves if you're not a boss.
I understand that. See, that I guess is why I'm like, so here's an example. And this is why I do the show, for one reason why I do this here, apart from the fact that I want to, but I like long form conversations, because if I'm talking to somebody, I can't learn a lot about them in 2 minutes. You see what I'm saying? Unless I do enough search where I can pick up their habits. Okay, so when they ask this question, they react like, I can pick stuff like that along the way. But when you have long form conversations, the person is susceptible of being vulnerable at one point. Like we talked about, your situation with the video that you made, where sometimes you're forced to confront it when someone's asking you, and your response is either going to be deal with it or not.
Yep.
And usually you can tell when someone is bullshitting when they pull up an act like, out of respect for that, I'm like, come on, just give it to me straight. You don't want to talk about just let me know.
Yeah.
So I like this form of conversation, because when you talk with somebody, there's a lot more you can get out of them. So I like to do my research on somebody so I get a feel for who they are and, what they've done. So that way I know when I'm talking to them, I have an idea what to be expecting. And sometimes I'm genuinely surprised along the way with some things they do or may say, which is, a nice thing. But if I'm looking to talk to somebody, I got to see, do they have a personality that I can interact with that will show something that I can feed off of here. And sometimes you can, and sometimes you can, and so usually you can tell they'll start loosening up at bit by bit as the conversation progresses. But with what I'm doing here, like Pat, for example, I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but there's a reason why I was bringing it up. I was talking with Pat before about, doing interviews with some celebrities, and I was like, I don't know if I can do those 5-minute interviews like you do, because Pat does them great. Talk to me about this movie, and I don't have the capability I do, but I don't want to, because it's like, it's not a very genuine thing for me to go up to someone and say, the movie was fantastic, and it's great, and I love what you did here. I have to like force myself to find something about a movie that I don't like and say the things that I did like, and then try to expand on that. I like one actor. That's the only thing I like about them. So,
I mean, I think the press junkets are difficult. I've been on both sides of it, asking questions and then also having to answer the questions.
When did you have to do that before?
There's a couple different projects that I've done. Nothing screamingly comes out to my mind, but I've done a couple like interviews where it's like, you're sitting there and somebody comes in and they have 5 minutes to ask questions, and then they leave, and then somebody else comes in, and you do this for 3 hours or 4 hours. Yeah. And you being on that side, you realize like, oh, this guy thinks that this question that he's asking hasn't been asked 7 times already, So it's like, hey, tell me about the movie. Fucking this guy goes da, 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 da. But the press junket videos that you see that have millions of views on YouTube, it'll be like, tell me that weird thing that your co-star does. It's like the off the wall question. And you have to understand that was probably one of 3 questions that person got to ask. So he just went off the rails, and let's ask something crazy.
Yeah.
And you usually get good responses on that, because it's like, oh, finally, not the tell me about your preparation for this role or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't enjoy those press. I don't enjoy those press.
I don't like watching them much either. There's a part of me that watches and I cringe. And I know the person that's doing it. Usually you can tell when someone's really good at what they're doing. And I mean, to me, Pat, thankfully he's willing to do it, because I don't think I would have been fired, honestly, if I had done it. Because I'd been like, listen, man, your movie was all right. Why'd you sign up to do the film? That's would be my reaction, and I don't want to be rude, because I understand that's their job. I don't understand their motivation behind it, other than it's a paycheck. But it's a very complicated thing for me. So right now, I think with what I'm doing here, this is my wheelhouse. This is what I prefer, because this is what I like to initiate with people, to have this long-term conversation with them. But but if the person's not willing to bite back, and I'm like, oh, well then, I fucked up then. So that's on me. So then I know.
I think I think with like interviews, there's got to be a trust. You start off with this is a movie about the thing, and you're just reading the whatever it is, and when you go through the interview and having the conversation, I think conversations break down all barriers and builds the trust. And then they go, okay, well, let's talk about this. Let's talk about, I'm more willing to get off script because I've built trust with you, and you can't build trust in 5 minutes.
No. Yeah, I think that's also important too. But I mean, I'm sure that when you went through that though, seeing, that cycle of being just pushed through that whole process there. I mean, the first time you went through that, was that like a eye-opening experience for you, having seen that and going through that yourself? Because I've never been through that before, so I've only heard stories. And the most consistent thing is that it's tiring. It's boring really quickly.
I think you get excited, right? You go, okay, here we go. We're gonna do interviews, like, and I'm whatever. And then the first interview, you knock it out. Second one, 5 minutes later, knock it out. And you go, third one, you're like, this is looking familiar. And then like 3 hours later, you're like, I've answered the same set of 5 questions for the last 3 hours. Tell me about your character, whatever it is. And you sit there and go, this is the worst experience, because it's not horrible, but you expected it to be so high. It's like going to Disney, but only getting to go into the back tunnel ways. You don't actually get to ride. And you go, oh, this is not what I had expected.
Yeah,
So,
when I was a kid, I remember I used to watch a lot of like Access Hollywood, Entertainment Tonight, and they usually for some reason they always had like the best reaction with all the actors, where they talk,
yeah,
so you worked with Tom Hanks. Oh yeah, he was fantastic. They have this like energy about that. And I'm like, wow, if interviews like that every day, imagine, these celebrities might be living the dream and they're happy, they're being asked about what they want or whatever else. And then having kind of see that from, kind of almost like behind the scenes, you're like, oh man, it's just not all that
yeah,
gorgeous looking. And
right.
but I think what's changed a lot is the internet definitely has made an impact, but YouTube and podcasting where you have these long form conversations. And when I listened to Brad Pitt had an interview with Mark Maron a while back, and I think that was the most authentic interview he's ever done.
Yeah. And I don't, and coming up in the 80s and 90s, it's like, nothing about Brad Pitt except for whatever was in either the tabloids or, the little clip that you saw in the interview. Brad Pitt is just a person that plays roles. He's not like,
Right.
you don't know what his authentic laugh sounds like, or,
Mhm.
like where's his head spat. But with these long form conversations, I think that in internet and podcasting, I feel like I know celebrities better, and reality TV doesn't count because
No.
that's just another production.
Yeah, I think it's like this. It's that curtain has been like stripped away, and you're starting to realize that a lot of like when, for example, like Conan just ended his his talk show career recently, but the realest I've ever seen him is when he's being interviewed on Howard Stern,
Yep.
where he's just Howard Stern is like the best in the business. I've grown up listening to him as a kid. He's actually one of the very few reasons in my entire life where I actually purposely woke up before 6 o'clock just so I can listen to a show. One of the very few times in my life where I anticipated that. But anyway, so when you listen to these guys who put on this act, like, hey, what's going on? Like, well, Conan's so goofy. But then here he is. You just hear him talk, and he's just like this normal guy that dropped the act and is having a conversation. And it's like, the medium has changed, and now the world is, I would think, is more wise to that now, where you really can't fool the public anymore. But for some reason, I always feel like that the marketing for that hasn't caught up with it yet. It's almost as though they're still far behind with what's going on right now,
because they don't know how to do it, because they've only been taught to do it the same way they've been taught to do it. Like, oh, you got to protect the image, or you got to protect the whatever it is, the mystique of it all. Right. But I mean, look at Tom Brady. Do you watch sports?
Not much. I mean, okay. I don't keep up with it like you and Pat do.
So, Tom Brady, he spent 20 years in the New England Patriots organization, and everything is, all of his answers at every interview has always been calculated, went out there, whatever. But now that he's not there, he's become like, he's shown such an authentic self that is wild. He's out there, he's doing podcasts, he's like swearing, and it's like, this motherfucker. Go, that's the Tom Brady that I would have loved to have a beer
Florida
with.
will do that to you.
Tom Brady, Florida man. Like, wait, what? But yeah, and I think that really comes down to, that's a huge comparison where he's no longer protecting a mystique of the Patriots way or whatever. Now he's like, I'm gonna say what I want. This is me. Take it or leave it. And
he's got the ability to do that because, one, he's got 7 Super Bowls now, and he's one of the he's probably the only guy in NFL history ever to have that cloud over him to where he's able to walk into a team and win championships. I mean,
if you look at it, like, how many Super Bowls do you have to win before you're like, hey, you know what, I'm just going to be myself? But like, it took 6. And then the 7th one,
lucky number 7 is what did it for him. Yeah. Well, I mean, again, that's the thing though. I mean, but he has the clout for him to do that because now people are willing to bend over backwards for him to come onto the team. I mean, literally the moment he walked out of the Patriots, when he went to the Buccaneers, I'm sure a lot of people have had doubts that, will he be able to replicate that same success? And yeah, he did.
Yep.
In fact, he did it pretty convincingly, I would say, considering the circumstances.
And this is, if you thought that Tom Brady was this clear cut, precise, this is what we do, we're doing this, doing the job, next guy up, whatever. And then you meet the new Tom Brady, you go, oh, I guess this is why they say don't meet your heroes, right? You'd be disappointed. And I think that's kind of like Hollywood, like Brad Pitt. Oh, so cool, so suave, and you're like, oh, maybe he's a nerd, maybe he's just kind of a goofball. Who knows?
Yeah.
But with the internet and long form podcasting, I think that has helped reveal what's behind.
And also, we capture videos of certain periods of time where certain people are behaving a certain way that were recorded and now are able to be uploaded, and you can see the true person behind the scenes, if you will. Like, I think everyone knows how that. I mean, for me, I grew up a Madonna fan, and I love her music. I don't like her newer stuff, but the older stuff is the shit. I still have cassette tapes, mind you. So I'm a legit old school fan. But anyways, so I grew up watching her music and watching her films and whatever else. And I had this image of her. And then one day I was like, this is over probably like 6-7 years ago. I came across an image of her, a video of her where she was, I don't know, causing a scene about how she couldn't breathe in this room that she was in. And meanwhile, this is like an open space. And she's like, I'm suffocating. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? You know, open the doors, open the window. I was like, God damn, this woman is just fucking like, she's like tyrannical. She's being like so like bossy with these people for what? And they're stopping the interview for her. And I mean, no, don't get me wrong. I knew that, you know, that what we see is just a facade for the most part, but that right there, like solidified for me, like, holy shit, I realized how ignorant I still was to that whole, you know, celebrity stratosphere. It's just, it's all a persona. And, you know, it's unfortunate because her music, not her later stuff, but her earlier stuff kicked ass. And I mean, she's a legend for a reason, but I think when we were talking about layer cake, once you're up that top for such a long period of time, everything else is like, you know, is beneath you. And that's the impression I got from her.
Can you imagine being that famous? It's two layers, right? Can you imagine being that famous? No, it's very difficult, right? To even just imagine, to fathom the day in the life of being that famous. And then you multiply that by, she has been that famous longer than she's not been, right? She was famous at 17, 18, 19 or whatever it is. And she's been famous for 30 years now. It's like, can you imagine what it's like to be that famous, but that famous for that long? Of course.
I learned this about from a video that I saw a while back of Michael Jackson, where, you know, wherever he goes, he you know, basically Michael Jackson had to be sectioned off from society no matter wherever he went. But I saw a video where apparently he has paid some sort of company or some sort, I can't remember the exact details, but he literally had paid people to be at a grocery store, and he would pretend you saw that, you know what I'm talking about? And I was like, how fucking insane the kind of life you have to live where you have to pay people to pretend to treat you like a normal person. And he's like, oh, that's a nice cucumber. You know, I'm like, oh my God, that like completely like fucked with me. And I was like, I just couldn't fathom that existed for that man, where he could not go to the grocery store and he had to pay to act in that environment. It's fucking insane.
Yep. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut. I apologize, but yeah, that is wild. And then when you watch it, it's like, look what he's talking about. Like, the stuff doesn't even make sense. Like, he's not looking at pricing. It's not like what's on sale. No, he's like, oh, that's a cool box. Let me go buy that. You're like,
yeah. I heard he had the power to like if you were to go into like a Chinese restaurant, I want a hamburger, and they'll bring it to him. Like, that's how much power he had. And I was like, how fucking insane is that? Like, I can't, like, you know, I think it's ridiculous for people to make these demands. You know, I wanted cheese in my burger, and you didn't give me cheese, and they make a fit about it. But from him to walk into a Chinese restaurant and say, I want a cheeseburger, and they just bring it to him like that, the power in that man, you know, he could have been president, and I guarantee he would have won every election.
Yeah, there's another one. There's another video of Michael Jackson where he's going through this, I don't know, this mall, this antiques mall or something like that, and he just goes, I want one of those, and I bought one of those, and I'm gonna have two of those. It's like, it's just like a child collecting. Like, money is not an object, and he doesn't like. It's so strange. I mean, we don't even go into Walmart, or we don't go to the dollar store. Oh, let me just get 5 of these. Let me get this. Like, well, then one of these for 5, and we need 2 of these. Like, it's his experience is devoid of all logic and necessity. It was just like, oh, I just want one of them. Well, if I buy 2 of these $10,000 spaces, where you got to put them? I don't know, somewhere.
I realized how naive I really was, and that's part of the reason why I think I'm still not fully matured yet, because I have shit like this behind me. I'm grateful for it. I love it, but is it necessary? No.
It's I have that collector's mindset as well, and I've been recently, my friends in the area have been like, hey, I'm getting rid of this record player, do you want it? I've gotten like 4 or 5 of these messages, and my first I was like, yes, I do. I want to get into vinyl. And then I realized, like, I don't have the space, I don't have the time, I don't consume music in that method anymore. Because think about this, I've thought through this process of like, okay, I get a record, right? I want to hear the one song, so I take the record out, put it on, play it, and then 3 minutes later, I got to take it off, put it back, put it away, to put the new one on. So it's like, with your VHS, it's like, I'm jealous, but then I realized, like, I don't actually consume media that way. Like, let me find it, let me put it in, look at the thing, and then rewind it. And
I still get a kick out of it. In fact, on the other side of the wall here, we have a loft, and we have an old school wooden box TV.
Mm-hmm. And you watch it on that. Tell me you watch it. Yeah,
I do. Dope. I put a lot of good. Like, what's a good movie to watch on that right now? So I have to pick like something that's like worthwhile. It seems weird for me to say, because back then I didn't think about it, but now I'm like, what's a good film to watch on that TV? And but meanwhile downstairs we have a smart TV, which is where the quality is 10 times better, holds a lot more content, but yet I'm more thoughtful about what film is worthy to put on that TV for me to watch.
Yeah, and I think I can relate, because I basically started drinking again. I during COVID I kind of stopped drinking for a long time, but now it's like, oh, let me have a beer when I go out, do a comedy show. But I want like the quality beer. It's not just, oh, let me just get a Corona, let me just get a Heineken. Like, let me get a beer that I'm going to enjoy. Let me make it worth the while.
IPAs?
I do IPAs. Yeah,
really?
I'm a big IPA fan. I've been doing a lot of like double IPAs, dippas, New England style, juicy, hazy.
You like the taste of that?
I do.
Really?
Well, there's some that I don't like, as far as like brand, and I was like, oh, I see what they're going for. Not a fan.
Okay.
It's kind of like art. It's not for everybody. Not everything is for everybody. But I go, let me drink of quality. Let me make it worthwhile. Let me not just drink to drink. But I get it. Like, let me watch a movie that's worth watching.
Right. Yeah. So are you more of like a beer guy, or you do are you outside of that as well?
Let's see. Yes. To answer your question, yes. Okay. Both. I do enjoy sipping a really nice, I've been sipping a lot of nice tequilas lately. So like Añejos.
Like what brand? Oh, okay.
Añejos. Oddly enough, as shameful as this sounds, there is a Costco brand called, Kirkland Añejo, and it is.
I've heard of that. Yeah, is it good?
It's the best $20 Añejo you will ever be able to buy.
Really? So is this like the 40s version of no? Is this the Hurricane versions of a tequila?
Say that one more time.
Hurricanes. You ever remember the Hurricane, the 40s? You get it from like the 7-Elevens?
Oh,
they're called Hurricanes.
So it's priced like as if it's like the affordable, but it's actually it's such a quality. Like, if you're just gonna sip with just ice, and you're gonna drink the bottle at some point, right? So why spend $100 on a bottle when you can spend $20? I really want to say it's probably closer to a $60 or $75 bottle of Añejo, where you can get it for $20. So I've been drinking a lot of that lately.
Really? Damn.
Yeah.
Look at you.
I smoke cigars. I like cigars. So
really,
I'm that guy. I'm that old guy.
You are that old guy. That's amazing. The last time I smoked a cigar, I was in New York. I was in Little Italy, actually. Some guy was making it out on the street, and I was like, I gotta buy one, and it was really good. But I'm not much of a smoker. I mean, I rarely smoked when I was a kid, but when I did, I was inhaled, and I was like, that's not enough for me. That's good enough for me. So, but I wanted to try a cigar, especially from New York. Guy made it. He was like, he did it in 2 seconds, gave it to me. I cut it up and I smoked it, and I did the worst thing, which is inhale.
Yeah.
And I've never been so sick in my life. And I was making my way back to Virginia, mind you. So I'm driving with this like nauseating feeling on the way back home. Thankfully, I didn't throw up at all, but I just remember thinking, this is so disgusting, and I've never touched a cigar ever again.
at some point when you feel that nauseous, like I'm gonna throw up, I feel like I just want to throw up. Let me just throw up. It's got to be better. Like let me just break this seal and let me live my life.
I try to suppress that, as bad as it sounds, because I don't want to get used to that.
Yeah.
I don't want my body to be used to like regurgitating all the stuff that I had. Like I just wanted to like just I swallowed it. Just keep it in there, man, and let it come out the other end. All right, that's all I ask. So I don't like, I hate the feeling of vomiting. It's one of the worst things I've ever that I could experience. Something about the idea of like something coming out of my mouth and me being there to see it and come out. I just that bothers me all the just thinking about it.
With all the times that I've gotten too drunk and I've thrown up, I remember, yes, throwing up has got to be number one worst thing to happen, right? That's that worst feeling. But the number two worst feeling is the feeling leading up to throwing up. And then the best feeling is after you're done and you're done, you're like, oh, okay, now I can go to bed.
Round two. Hell yeah, man. That happens to me. Yeah, it's happened before. But
let's go.
Yeah. And like, I just can't. That's why I don't drink as much as I was never much of a heavy drinker to begin with, but I knew enough because I've been around enough guys who can't control themselves what I did not want to do. And I, if there's anything that I can take, that I can look back on, that I actually am very thankful that I actually stuck with, is, don't do what those guys did.
Yeah.
Pace yourself. And I'm so glad. If there's anything that I've disciplined myself in, it's drinking. So I know if I drink heavy, all right, so don't eat too much, drink a lot of water. And then once you're done with that, go crazy and then stop. So I know how to do all that. So,
I do the math back. I'm at the age where I do the math backwards.
Well, how old are you, by the way?
40.
You're 40. Oh, you're not that older than me. I'm 36.
Yeah. So, but I'm at that age where I go, okay, party starts at 9. I want to be home by midnight. So let's see. We'll probably drink 3-4 drinks. Okay. Water between. Got it. Here we go. Yeah. And you look at the clock and go, okay, drink number 2, order it, get some water. I'm that guy.
No, when you're Hispanic, the clock doesn't mean shit. It's just like, all right, how many more we got? All right, well, the only time the clock matters is, okay, what time is it right now? It's midnight. Okay, go to the store right now. Get as much beer as you can before they close, because otherwise we can't get shit and we're gonna be dry.
A little bit about me when it comes to like drinking and IPAs, and like I'm not
that's where we're starting off here with. Yeah, that's that. Yep. Okay, that's where we went going here. But yeah, so
I'm not a man of like high class. I'm not a man of like high taste, but I do get into tangents where I'm like, oh, I'm going to buy a cigar, but I want one, and I'm going to learn everything I need to know about it. Not to be an aficionado, but just to be like, oh, this is what I like. Let me find this and let me understand how things are made. And so I can have a cohesive conversation, but definitely not aficionado. So that comes with like IPAs, cigars, like,
okay.
Yeah, that's what I enjoy doing.
So do you like your beer strong, or do you like a little sweetness to it?
I like, I've been digging a lot of citrusy flavors. So the hazy IPAs, summer, it's hot. It's like 110 degrees out right now.
It's dry heat is over in Las Vegas, isn't it?
So dry heat.
Is it really? Dry. Is it that bad?
Yes.
I would think it did, because I mean, you've been on the East Coast, the humidity, what it's like over here. So is it more bearable out there with the dry heat than it is on the East Coast?
Yes. So the East Coast is like 80 degrees. It's miserable, right? Because it's 80 degrees and it's like 95% humidity.
Yeah.
There's mosquitoes.
Yeah.
You'll sweat through your shirt.
Yep.
110 degrees, like you're barely perspiring. Like you're not sweating through your hat because it's dry. You're gonna get dehydrated pretty quick. Your skin gets weird feeling because it's dry.
But does it get like sandpaper type of feeling? Is that what you're referring to? Oh,
yeah. Okay. Tight, itchy because it's dry.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, a lot of lotion out there for you guys then, right?
A lot of lotion. So, my wife is like, okay, this is what we're gonna do. Get out of the shower, lotion, oil, lotion, different oil. Like and then that's good for like 2 hours. And then you're at work and you're like, why? I'm so itchy. All my skin's dry.
But does it ever get chilly out there too? Because I mean, because you're close by the desert, isn't? I'm sure it gets pretty cold out there too, right?
Not like, I mean, chilly, but like we're from the East Coast, so it's not like, it's not cold. I think this winter the worst that I saw was 45 degrees.
Oh, really?
At night.
Oh, okay. You
You're
ever been out
like,
to the desert there in out by in Nevada where you were at?
a little bit, but I mean, I'm not an outdoorsy kind of guy. I'm not
Really?
at all. Not at all. Not
So
at all.
you're not an adventurous guy to go out mountain climbing and think that you're not into that sort of stuff.
I can do it, but I'm not going to do it just to go in a circle to get back to my car so I can go home. You know, like nothing is worse than like going and like hard trekking an hour and then go, huh, good job. And then you go backwards. Fuck that.
That's the funniest thing I've ever heard. I'm not gonna go in a circle just to get back to my car.
Yes, I'm not.
I love that response.
That's just nonsensical to me. Like, listen, zombie apocalypse happens, and we gotta huff it out to wherever. I'm about it. I'm all about that shit. Oh, Timmy's lost in a well. The barn's on fire. We'll go. Sightseeing, keep it.
I love that response. That's the best answer I've ever heard to a hike. My wife is actually getting into hiking now, and you know she's been wanting me. I like going to hikes, but I'm not like her. So her friends have influenced her a lot to go do that. I mean, she's going like 2 hours out of where we live to go to a really nice, beautiful, and she's taking pictures. Like, God, it's so beautiful. It's beautiful. I love it. It's nature. And I was like, it's fantastic. When are you coming back? You know.
Yep.
So I'm like,
send me those pictures, and I'll say I was there too.
Yeah, I'll crop myself in the back, you know, doing this, you know. Yeah, no, I can't. I love it. I really, really do. But I guess I'm so comfortable. I'm too much of a lazy person that, you know, if I'm comfortable with something, I'll stick with it for a long, long time. And it's not hard for me to break out of it. I mean, I'm not sure if you've ever been through that before, where like once you're stuck in that zone, it's, you know, it's hard for you to step out of it. And yeah, I'm more of a middle guy. I can't stand the heat, but I don't mind the winters. But I prefer like fall and spring.
Mhm.
Those are my seasons. I'm the
Mhm.
middle guy. It's got to be right in the middle. So in the house, it's cool. As you can see, I'm wearing a sweater. I hate the heat. Nope. Put the sweater on. I don't mind the AC. I don't, as long as I'm comfortable. That's what matters for me. But you know, I laugh what you said earlier, because the idea of hiking, I could never really register why it's so appealing to other people, and I could never really find an answer to provide a rebuttal. But I think that response right there you just gave me was the best answer I've ever heard. So I thank you for that, Lo. You've given me
Absolutely.
a solid answer for me to give to people. But I was going to ask you something here next with regards to you know, you being in Vegas now, because I know that you know, you were out in LA for quite some time, and then you made yourself out to Vegas, which I can't recall if I remember hearing from that interview you did with Pat that, you know, how easy that transition was for you coming from, because you're East Coast, West Coast, and then further closer to the desert, if you will. So like how's that been for you now ever since, you know, COVID kicked in?
Well, let's see. So I grew up in Boston, so Boston
Right.
boy through and through. I thought we were gonna wear matching hats. I saw your last interview.
I was gonna wear it. And, oh, you know what? Let me. I have it right here.
Nope, too late. Nope, you're already committed.
Nope.
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 Samesies.
Yep.
There we go. Look at this fucking guy over here.
Yeah, I was gonna wear it, but I just grabbed that hat and left it on. So yeah, here we go.
Here we go. I feel so much more comfortable.
It does. I love these hats. You know, I was someone kept calling these hats fedoras.
Did you punch him?
No, I did not, because I called them fedoras too when I first started. Because when I saw, I told a guy one time, I was like, hey, I'm looking for those hats. You know, like, and I was trying to describe them. He's like, I think they're called fedoras. He's like, okay. So he went, grabbed a fedora, and I was like, no, that's not what I wanted. He's like, you said a fedora. I was like, yeah, it's not what they're called. He's like, no, what kind of hat you talking? The one that the Brits wear. He's like, oh, you're talking about a flat cap. And I was like,
Yep.
Oh, okay. And then that was, you know, I stuck with that. But
so in Boston, we call them scally caps.
Oh,
scally.
Right, where did that name come from?
We have so many names that nonsensical. One guy named John said it one time, and then it's been
just stuck.
Yeah, I guess so.
Thanks,
That's
John.
how everything is in Boston. Thanks, John. Fucking good kid. Good kid.
Can you still a Boston accent?
Sometimes. Normally when I'm drunk.
I noticed it comes out once in a blue moon whenever I hear you talk. Like it just kind of creeps itself out a little bit. So I was wondering if you still maintain it from time to time.
So grew up in Boston, lived in LA, and I realized that an Asian guy with a Boston accent is like a really good, cool parlor trick that lasts about 5 minutes. And then girls are just like, yeah, let's stop talking.
Really?
Yeah. So my wife makes fun of me all the time. My wife is from the Bay, and she's like, I think the words that she's been calling me out on lately is jab. I got to go to work at my jab. Yeah, my jab. Bagel.
I can hear that.
Good. Bagel. Yeah. And then, in the morning. Yeah, those are the ones that
so you still have some stereotypical words that comes out from time to time. So you don't, does it naturally come out for you as you're talking, or do you have to make yourself aware that you're to make it to have the accent put back on?
When I'm comfortable, like, we've been talking for an hour now, I'm comfortable. So it's a lot more loose. Boston accent is very lazy, so to speak.
Sometimes I see that. Yeah.
Kind of lazy. So when I'm comfortable, it comes out. When I'm drinking, it comes out. But a lot of times I have to remind myself, like, okay, enunciate. Use all of the letters. But most so, I think it comes out a lot when I swear in my swears.
Oh, really?
Yeah. My wife hates it because fuck is an ugly word, right? It just kind of,
it's a beautiful word. It's
beautiful, but it's like, it's pretty harsh, right? It starts in the ends of the uck, and I pronounce it. And when I get intense, it's like fuck, FAWK, fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, you made a horribly beautiful word horribly horrific. How?
Right. Well, but because when I grew up in Northern Virginia, and surprisingly, I'm sure you're already aware of this here, but there's a lot of people from New England that live in those parts, and it's like a melting pot of like all the different regions in the North and East. You have New York, Jersey, Boston, Vermont, Maine, New Hampshire. Somehow they always trickle down to that part of the area. And one of the biggest thing that I've learned from people who are from Boston, specifically in Boston, is that it's like I have a hard time really understanding what they're saying when they're fresh out of the city.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult for them to assimilate, to try to not make themselves so Boston. Yeah. And it takes a long time. I don't know if New Yorkers, I don't believe have the same problems, but people from Boston have the worst when it comes to losing or try to water down the accent.
And I will say, I lived in LA for 10 years, from 26 to 36. And from my ages 26 to 36. And I think I spent the first 5 years just being like, yeah, LA is cool, but it's not as good as Boston, like, like Boston's the greatest place on earth. And I think that's kind of just the mentality of being from Boston, where you just go, hey, this is the greatest city. It's not, but you think it is. You're like, hey, that's you go to a nice fancy restaurant. Yeah, but it's not as good as Kelly's roast beef on Route 1. You just find ways to.
Is it really that? I've heard of that place. Is that really that good?
No, it's not.
Okay.
But it's just, you find ways to knock whatever you're doing by comparing it to something in Boston.
Oh my God.
We're those guys. We're literally those assholes. We're just I mean, LA's cool. LA's amazing. It's not as cool as Boston.
Did you like LA though, living out there for that period of time?
Yeah. Growing up as a kid from Boston, never living anywhere else but like that New England area, LA was amazing. All of the things that I thought were true in life slowly became like, oh, there are other options, like weed, right? Growing up in Boston, weed, you're like, oh, if you smoked weed, you're a loser. Mm-hmm. You grow up, you realize that it challenges all of your life's experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see. Well, but here's the thing about LA that I've never been out there before in my life, but the most common thing that I've heard, at least from some people, is that unless they were already born and raised there, is that it could be perceived as being very fake. It's a lot of people are trying to be famous, and everyone's an actor. That's kind of the most common thing I've heard from most people who have been out there, trying to get themselves adjusted, if you will, to life out in LA.
I agree, but once you realize that life is a marathon and not a sprint, and you take that approach with everything, like your career, then you realize like, oh yeah, you can tell people that are just moved from Whistle Stop, Iowa, middle nowhere, and they come in, they're the hottest chick or the hottest dude from their town, and they just realize like, oh, you're literally a dime 3 dozen in LA. And you realize like, oh, hard work, what do you call it? It's a battle of attrition. You realize these things, and like LA becomes this beautiful place where you just go, hey, I'm not in a rush to do anything. Everybody is in the industry, and you realize that like, oh, you're not in. One of the things I learned in LA is like, you want to curate a group of good people. It's not about who's more famous or who's rich. It's like good people is all that matters. It doesn't matter their race, doesn't matter where they're from. Right. And I was lucky enough to take that lesson with me when I moved to DC. I didn't like a lot of my experiences with DC, but I met some of the greatest people. You, Pat, Glenn Lawrence. I was lucky enough to curate such a great group of people that I am thankful, and I feel bad every time I say I hated DC. I hated DC, but I met some great people. My business partner Eddie Lyles. We can't be more polar opposites, but yet he has been he's been great people. So,
well, for someone who's born and raised around the area, I don't miss it. And to be truthful, I don't really care for that much anymore. There are aspects of it that I do miss. I'm sure. I mean, I'm not sure how familiar you are with the area now, but there are certain things that I miss about Virginia that I found here that kind of that pretty much replaces the things that I miss about Virginia. So, for example, like the food options here. I miss. There's certain vibes that Arlington had for me that I missed. But once I came down here and started searching around certain areas, a lot of those vibes that I was missing from Northern Virginia were replaced down here. So we talked about Enzo's pizza, the for this slice that I just had.
You murdered it.
It was fucking delicious, dude. Delicious. I wish I could have served you some. But we have something like that here, more or less in the country, because I live like right in the mix of like suburbs, and then the country's literally on the other side. And then you have pockets of all that here. So all the things in Northern Virginia that I sort of missed are all over here now. So it's like more or less like I've drifted away from that feeling of that sentiment, like, oh, I miss certain things, but it's gone now because
you replaced it. And I think that's kind of where, when you move away from where you're born, I don't think humans up until the last 30 years really moved beyond 40 miles of where you grew up, right? That was like it's a common stat. I think it's like 70% of Americans up until 1970 didn't leave a 40-mile radius of where they were born. They're going to live and die in a 40-mile radius. But you start going, this reminds me of a place back home, or, this is better than the place back home. You just find your spots. And I've been in Vegas for almost a year now. And I will say that the food options here in Vegas are amazing. And none of them are on the Strip.
Oh,
anything you want, any style of food, anything you will find here. Sure, it might not be top end, or the place back home might be better, but it's like, oh no, you will find the fix. Whether, wherever you're craving, and most of them will stay open till 11, 12 o'clock, some of them 24 hours. Oh, yeah. I live down the street from a solidly good Philly cheesesteak spot, open 24 hours.
Is it any good?
Solid. Is it better than the ones you're going to find in Philly? Probably not. But is it better than Subway? Is it better than, Quiznos?
I think anything's better than those two brands there, I would imagine.
Yeah, but if you drive another hour from wherever you are, the sub you're only going to get is Subway, so true. It's like here, super solid, hits all of the checkbox. It's affordable. It's open 24 hours.
It's amazing. Yeah. See, that's one thing about here in North Carolina that I have come to realize, that it's usually some of the best places that you can try some food are almost in the worst spots. Like you'll just the hole in the walls is what they're calling it here.
Yep.
So like there's a barbecue spot. I've never been there before, but I've heard great things about it. But it's literally right in the middle, not in the middle of the road, but you understand where I'm coming from. In the middle of the road, it looks like a shack.
Yep.
There's barely any parking.
Yep.
And it's a shitty sign outside, but it's always packed.
Sold. I'm sold.
Right. And I'm like, I got to try this place. But the worst part about it is that it's right in the middle of the main road where there's that's where all the traffic is. And they are fucking geniuses for picking up that spot. I don't know how long they've been there for, but I do know what's the guy that travels around and tries all these different restaurants across
Bourdain or
not
Zimmerman?
Him. I think it might have been Zimmerman or Guy Fieri or one of those guys.
Sure.
I think it might have been him, but he went out there and he was like, "This is amazing," and I was like, "All right, well, I got to try it one day." But mind you, I just haven't got around to it. But then again, there's like so many little spots here and there that I've come across that are just as good, if not more amazing, that are like I'm surprised that that people. I'm sure people here know about the area, but it's one of those things where like I've grown to love this place so much. Like I really love where I live that all I want to do is tell everyone, like, when you guys come here, you got to check this spot out, check that spot out. Like that's how much I love this area, because of the environment here is like, it feels more like home than it was for me up in Northern Virginia. I'm not sure if you felt that way before, coming from Boston and moving to LA and then coming here to Vegas. Have you ever had that kind of like attachment to any of those places you were staying at?
LA, but I think it just, being there for so long, you kind of fall in love with, at some point, if you give things long enough, you'll fall in love with them, that kind of thing. But Vegas, like I fell in love with, I felt like I should have moved here. It was in the conversation of moving before I moved to DC. It was me and the wife were like, "Hey, where do you want to go?" And kind of put some spots on the map. DC ended up winning for her career. And then when that came to a close, she just decided, like, "Where do you want to go?" I was like, "Let's go to Vegas. No state income tax. It's sunny 370 days out of the year. Does
it ever snow out there at all?
It does, but not every year.
Okay.
I think it snows probably once every 3 or 4 years.
Was it like 2 inches or something like that?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
The sun comes out and it's
Did
gone.
They close down schools?
Of course.
Oh,
of course.
God. When I first moved down here, because we've been here for 5 years this August. When we first moved down here, one of the guys I was working with was like, when it snows 2 inches, they shut down school for like 3 days. I was like, bull fucking shit. That's no, they don't do that here. Because I've been to North Carolina before. I was like, I know it snows here, so they're prepared for that. No joke. They had 2 inches of snow, and the sun came out literally maybe an hour later, melted all the snow away, and they were still closed the following day. And the third day, it was a 2-hour delay. I was like, why? And the reason was, from what I understand, was because there are certain pockets in certain areas, like there's still some farm areas out there where they have trees hovering over some dirt road where the snow hasn't melted, and they got to consider those guys. I'm like, oh my God.
For the safety of the children, sir, think about the children.
Yeah.
I just the thing about Vegas that people don't understand is, like, if you take the Strip out of the equation, you are in the best suburbia in the country.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, whatever you're into, right? Super loose alcohol laws. There's no real last call. There's no, like, there's some dry counties in the country, or like you can't buy alcohol on Sunday. None of those laws apply here. Like,
really?
It's a free for all. Weed is legal, open carry, firearm. So whatever you're into, this is like literally the freest city in the country, and you don't have to live on the Strip. So I was at the Strip earlier today. That's why I was late. I apologize. But it's like the first time I've been on the Strip in, like, I've been here a year. I've been on the Strip 3 times, 4 times.
Oh, really?
There's only time you go is when people are in town. So you're
living there, you don't visit it that often?
No.
Really? Okay.
Like, how often do you go to downtown Charlotte?
It's a good question. We've been there since we've been here. I've been there total of myself.
Not a lot,
almost
right?
10 times altogether.
Yeah, in 5 years.
A lot of it has to do with businth. We have to drive through there. But my wife and I, we went before
Mhm.
just to have a look at it, and we were like, oh my god, this is amazing. Yeah, it's only down the road. So yeah,
Yeah.
you're 100% right.
And then like even more so, it's like, how often did you go to like Metro Center in DC? Like how often
Oh,
did you go?
I can count 5 times.
Right, exactly.
So yeah.
And that's exactly how locals here look at the strip. It's like, I might work there, but if I don't work down there, the only time I go to the strip is when family's in town because they're staying at the casinos. But yeah, you look at it, and Vegas is this phenomenal city, a phenomenal suburb, a phenomenal suburb, and everything you want is here. So I do enjoy it.
When you're so out in Vegas though, considering that things are kind of moving back to normalcy, if you will, are you starting to pick up on that where certain events are now coming back into town?
Everything's back.
Everything's back.
Everything's back. They kind of fucked up, right? Okay, so generally, it's been pretty loosey goosey since the probably 6 months. August, it's kind of like the casinos have been kind of open, no shows, alcohol's been flowing, restaurants 50% capacity, and then it's been slowly opening. What they messed up was like maybe a month ago, they're like, hey, July 1st, no more restrictions. And the day that they made that announcement a month ago, everyone goes, well, July 1st, June 1st, it's all the same. And they just no masks. Like everything's open. Shows are back. I was just at the strip and you're wearing a mask and people look at you like you were the cause of it all. Like, why would you?
Yeah.
Are we over that now?
Yeah.
Like what?
Yeah, a little bit of here. Because where I live here in Gaston, which is pretty conservative. This whole area is like, full of Trump supporters. A few of them are like right next door neighbors. And when you go to Charlotte, it's a little more libertarian, if you will.
Yep.
So there's a huge distinction of like, who, where people's thought processes are behind wearing the mask. A lot less of it here now, because in North Carolina, the governor said, you don't have to wear the mask anymore. But when you go to Charlotte, it's a lot more of that. And for some reason, in Gastonia, like I said, a lot of conservatives, hey, I have my rights and I don't have to wear it. Therefore, it's my God-given rights. Okay, asshole. But when you start coughing up blood, don't look at me and say, why I need some help,
Right.
But anyway, so
I think that everyone here is solely in hospitality, and everyone wears masks. The people that work wear masks because they know savages from every other city in the country are coming to hang out here. And you can't. They just descended.
Are coming.
Man, Memorial Day, anybody with $12 in their pockets and a full tank of gas just showed up because you could get a hotel for like $45 a night. It was wild. And no masks. This is Memorial Day. No masks. Like you would never have thought that we were in 2021. You would thought that we were back in 1928. Whatever it is. People just wild.
Wow.
So
what were you doing in the strip there earlier today then?
So I had a buddy whose father turned 80, and it was like a lunch on. So it was just a birthday, but he was in town.
I didn't take it away from that, did I?
No. It was one of those things where we were just kind of walking around the casino. I was like, oh yeah, I'll leave it. I got to be home by 4:30, and you're like Eastern time. Like, oh, you're right. I didn't read all of the letters, all of the letters in the text.
I always have to emphasize that with a lot of people because I assume, me personally, I assume they would check into that. Hey, EST, okay, cool. And I'll still get. What time is it on your end?
You definitely put it there, and for whatever, this is my brain, right? My brain goes 5, and then do the math. I go. Sometimes it does the math, and sometimes it just jumps to conclusions. So that's my bad.
No, it's fine. But I mean, I've done that too, where I miscalculated the time. So trust me, that's why I was like, no, fucking Loy didn't get his time right. God damn it. I wasn't like that at all. I've made mistakes like that before too. And I learned it. I was like, oh shit, I sent this message way too early for this person. But it's like, you learn with that. It's just part of the one thing about comedy is like, sure, funny is subjective, right? But like professionalism is what reigns. And if you can't be the funniest person in the room, be the most professional person in the room. You show up early, you show up prepared, all of the things. And when I'm late, I feel like if anything that I can control, if I can control anything, it's
being
your tendency, being punctual.
Right,
I agree too. trust me, I've been late before. Well, so you brought a comedy. I actually wanted to ask you about this. I meant to
Sure.
ask you this earlier. So, you know, since you're in the scene, and I'm wondering now, you know, are you making your way back into the comedy scene in the clubs out there to try to get your routine back up and running again?
Yeah, right now I've been getting some spots here and there, and right now,
Like open mics?
yeah, open mics and bar shows and smaller shows. But for me, it's like, we're just getting back now, and I'm trying. And I just recorded and released an album, my first
really?
album, Asian Privilege. It's on YouTube. So I just released that last year, and I haven't really been trying new material. So now I'm just trying to put together, my next 15 minutes, next 30 minutes, and trying to find new things to talk about, because everyone's talking about the same thing. Oh my God, the masks and all of that. So if I'm talking about the same stuff, let me find a new spin on it. It's arduous. It's a process, just trying to find, like, okay, what's funny, or what should I talk about, and how do I make this funny? And that is kind of why the OG comics would just like, just be funny, don't put your stuff out there, because once you put it out there, it's out there, and now you got to find more jokes to replace the stuff that you put out. It's some degree it's true. So just trying to find the new stuff, and for the first time in my life, I'm actually trying to be responsible, trying to have a job, and trying to have, listen, being a professional comedian, the thing that your CPA is supposed to tell you is like, hey, you're not going to get a great tax return. You might even owe money. No CPA wants to tell you this stuff. Yeah. But the good CPAs will tell you this stuff because, like, hey, you need to show that you made money. So, I'm going to like the mortgage brokers, and they're like, you're not going to qualify for anything because you made $12 in the last, every year for the last 10 years, you made $12. And you go, well, but I got a good tax return. Like, yeah, because you got a good tax return, it showed you made no money. How are you going to afford a house with an annual income of $12? Like,
I see.
Fuck, you're right.
There was a video that I came across a while ago, and it was a 3-hour video with the comedian Ari Shafir. And you know which one I'm talking about?
I do. Yeah, I do.
Okay. That video was so informal to me because I didn't realize, what, the business side of it of comedians.
Yep.
And I'm so glad I listened from start to finish, because there's a lot of things that he had shared about, when he went on tour with Joe Rogan. Did it help anything with your career? No, not at all.
Nope.
And, and I was going to ask you that too, but then now that I'm thinking about this, that video, I think you pretty much may have answered my question, but because like I said before, like I've come across some things you've done in the past, and I've seen, the people you've been around, but I always wondered that, for me, from what I'm gathering with some comedians, not all of them, that it's almost like a very tight knit community, to a point where it's like, you're my friend, I'll bring you with me, but you have to put in the work yourself, which is, like anything else you do. But I always wondered if, some comedians open up to the idea, hey, this guy's really good, I like him, I want to talk to him. Like, do you have that sort of like reputation where you can build that up, and hopefully that would not, I guess I'm trying to be very careful how I say this, Rob, because I don't want to mess it up here, but does it help prepare the opportunities for you to be able to showcase your comedy? Because I said it before in the beginning, I really do think you're funny. I think you're a very funny comedian. I like what you say, which is why I was shocked that I couldn't find more clips of you out there doing your comedy bits, because a lot of stuff that I have come across so far are hilarious in my opinion. Even now during this conversation where we're talking, you made me burst out laughing by saying the most simplest things, but it's just that timing, which I think you have. So I'm wondering if when you're around these comedians, if ever some of them ever commented about what you've done, give you some insight, give you some advice, and having you fine tune your approach, if you will, on the comedy.
Yeah, I think that it is a close knit community, and I think that funny is one part of the equation, but the biggest part is like, do I want to hang out with this guy or this person for a long extended time? Being like, okay, flying in, That's a couple hours to whatever city you're in, hanging out at the airport, hanging out at the hotel, hanging out at the show, hanging out in the morning or in the afternoon. Like, can you hang out with this guy for a weekend? Is he trustworthy? Is he professional? Can he do the work? I think all of these factor in. Like, yeah, we all have friends that we'd love to hang out with.
Mm-hmm.
We all have friends that we love to hang out with that we wouldn't trust with our car keys. Like, is this guy, am I safe around this guy? And then the factor is, can this guy do the work? Is he funny-ish? Is he funny enough? Because the thing that you learn around comics, especially bigger comics that fill the room, they don't really care how funny you are. You just have to not fuck up. Are you going to do really, really edgy jokes? No, then that's fine, because we know that the crowd is not here for you. You just have to not be that.
That's what I was hearing. There's a certain unwritten rule about comedy, which I think it varies, but with comedian, but at least maybe it's just a generational thing. But one of the things I've heard about, which is that a lot of times comics, the main act, they don't want the opening act to steal the thunder. Like they have this thing about where, the guy's too, is getting most of the attention, when by the time I come on stage, that fire is gone, if you will. I mean, maybe I'm wording it incorrectly here, but
no, you're right. That's definitely a thing. That's definitely.
But is that what the older generation of comics, or is that still happening now to this day? Because I get the feeling, maybe it just depends on the comedians that I'm following here, but usually I would think that the smart comics, the ones that know they're funny, they don't have to concern themselves about the guy that's opening up for them, because if he's doing his job, or he or she's doing their job, then all they got to do is just step it up and better their game. Therefore, that opening act did them a favor, because now they got to bring up their A game at this point.
I mean, we all know people who go to work and they don't actually want to work. Mm-hmm. And just go, hey, let me just coast through the day. And I get that. I think that there's a science to comedy shows, where, let's say, you can't just be hilarious from minute 1 to minute 60, right? There's got to be like highs and lows. There's got to be like, you laugh and then plateau, and then laugh and then plateau, and then close out the show.
Yeah.
Right. So if you are on this trajectory, and then somebody that comes in and does 20 minutes in front of you, and it's just straight up, the crowd gets exhausted halfway through your show, halfway through your set. Mm-hmm. That could be a reason. But on the other end, some people just don't want to do the work. And I think the thing that is, if you are a name and you're selling out just sheerly on the value of your name, people came to see you and they're going to laugh at really anything, regardless if it's funny or not. Like, I've seen comics that are hilarious, world renowned, fill the room, and they come in, hey guys, hey, where are you from? Oh, I'm from Wisconsin. I don't know where that is. And then people laugh. And you're like, that wasn't even a joke. That was just, the crowd is ready to see you. So me being a comic that comes in front of you, I'm not going to steal your thunder. I don't care how funny I am. Like, people go, oh yeah, that's great. But where's the guy? Where's the guy we came to see?
So you think that could be a detriment for you if you try to outshine your the main attraction?
It can be. It can definitely fuck up your weekend. If you blow this guy out of the water, maybe he's not a good comic. Maybe he's just a name. Maybe he's an actor, a wrestler, whatever. You just blow him out of the water, right? And then so everyone's just kind of staring at this guy on stage when he's up there. Yeah, you might not get a second show. You might not get a second night. You might not be part of the equation.
That's kind of fucked up, I think, in my opinion. Because I mean, here's the thing. Comedy for me is like, you mentioned before, it's an art form. It's a very difficult thing to do. Not everyone can do it. And, a lot of times some people that think are funny in a party room can't translate that onto the stage, where they can command the crowd. They can, deliver the jokes, or learn how to adapt when there is a heckler, or whatever the case may be. It's a very difficult thing to do. And, for someone who is, and maybe I'm because I'm looking from the outside, but for someone who is busting their ass and making a name out there for themselves to try to, move up to the next level of their career, and then for someone to say your shit was so much more funnier, fuck you, and you're out of the the club now.
Right.
Why? That's the reason why I'm here. Or I'm not talking to myself, but I mean, like, that's the reason why they're there. Why would that? But again, that's ego, and I can see that, that so-called art form and that camaraderie maybe isn't as tight as I thought it would be. But then again, I guess it just depends on the circles you hang out with too. That can kind of help formulate your thought process.
Yeah, I think now is a little bit different. The whole structure of, okay, there's a host who does like maybe 10 minutes up front and then introduces the feature, who does 25-30, and then the headliner will do 45 to an hour. Like that it works. But let's say you have a murderer that's just hilarious, right? Who nobody knows who he is, but and I am a celebrity wrestler or whoever, a reality star. Hey, why don't I host? Let me host. Let me do some time in between. Let me, I don't have to follow this murderer, and it's going to be the best show possible. But people have ego in the structure and the old school thought process. People aren't willing to change. When I did my album, Asian Privilege, when I was talking about it, the concept was, because of COVID, there's nobody going to be in the room.
Right.
And people were like,
which I thought was genius, by the way.
Thank you. I thought that, people were like, oh, it can't be done. It doesn't make sense. Comedy requires laughter. Comedy requires all of these kind of archaic thought processes. And I said, I almost believe them. And my wife goes, no, you saw a vision. Fucking just do it. Right. Yeah. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but you saw it, go do it. And don't be constrained to archaic thoughts. And I think that with comedy, we are now growing again. We don't have to be stuck to like these archaic thoughts of like, oh, that's the way it was done in the 70s. We're going to do it. We're going to keep on doing it the same way. There is room to grow.
Yeah. Last time I actually went to a comedy show was actually here in Charlotte, and I saw Rogan and Hinchcliffe, do their bid. To be truthful, I never really liked Joe Rogan's comedy when I was, I liked him outside of comedy, hosting and doing his podcast, whatever else. But his actual comedy routine just never registered with me. So I was not very, I wasn't looking forward to his stand-up. Well, my sister had, bought me tickets for my birthday and said, let's go check out the show. So I went with her husband. We sat. He was actually hilarious live. So like, I guess the environment does help out to a point. And I went to I don't know if you remember the Arlington Draft House Cinema out in
Arlington.
Yeah. So my brother and I went to a show out there, and it was one of those like open mics type of situation. That environment is so crucial to like really develop your comedy skills, because to me that's where you're going to see the different levels of funny, if you will. Who can you can see who works well with what and how, and you can also see who's repeating the same jokes again. Like I saw, what's her name? She was on the Amy Schumer show. I forgot what it was called, but something Lynch. I guess that's the name of the comedian. But when I was watching her, she was funny. But then I went to watch her other stuff after I seen her that opening, after that show, and then I caught on that she's doing the exact same routine from what I just saw the night before.
Yeah.
And she's done it everywhere else. And she's also Spaniard too, because her mom is Spaniard. So she spoke Spanish, and she's doing the exact same joke in Spanish. And I was like, holy shit, this exists. Because I've heard about that stuff, but having seen her act and then seeing what she's done years before and years since, it's like nothing has changed. So I'm wondering, I just don't understand how people don't grow from that and how to develop those skills. And one other guy who I thought was fucking hilarious, he literally rocked the house, got paid, and he just walked the fuck right out.
Yep.
I was like, that is such a gangster right there. I forgot his name, but I would give him props because he was hilarious. But
I think the hard part about comedy is like, there is no practice. So think about playing guitar, right? But you don't get to bring this guitar at home. You have to do this guitar in front of a dive bar or a live band. Like, you pick it up for the first time, you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. That is comedy, right? You literally have to practice in front of a crowd. Sure, you can prep and you're like, okay, the jokes, but you do it and then you adjust, and then you do it again and you adjust. So it's like polishing.
Right.
And I think the the difficulty of it is you go, okay, I've been working on these jokes for 2-3 years and I know that they work. Well, however long I've been working on them, I know that they work. They're hilarious. And you have to give those up. And you go, oh, I don't want to give these up because I know they work. So you do this same set. It's like, oh crap, the crowd is packed. And you go straight into flight mode. And here are the old jokes because I know that they work. It's because nobody wants to bomb. Nobody wants to have that empty feeling of failure. Yeah. But for me, like, I don't know, maybe it's my upbringing, maybe it's just my insecurities, but it's like when I do well, I don't like it when people come up and say, "Oh, good job," because I'm like, I
so
feel.
Is that how you felt too when I'm saying, "Hey, you did a great job," because like that truth, I had a funny feeling about that, but that's the thing though. Oddly enough, I actually do feel uncomfortable because when I try to give people compliments because I feel like it could, because if I bring a guest on the show, I tell them, "Hey, I love what you've done." But does it seem genuine to them that I'm telling that?
It's 100% me. That's me.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
I understand where you're coming from, but I mean, I guess maybe in some ways I understand where you're coming from because I feel uncomfortable too. It's like I love what you've done. Like when you said I'm a big fan, I was like, what did I do? Like that's how, because when you responded, I was like, I told my wife, like, he says he's a big fan. Like, really? He's like, yeah, but I don't know how to feel about that because I've never heard that before. Glenn was nice enough to say the same. I love what you do. I was like, oh, thanks, man. How do I react to that other than saying thanks? It's a very uncomfortable feeling.
When I first started comedy and up until recently, I would be like, oh, you're hilarious, good job. Oh, and I would find something to like segue out or, like, and my wife goes, she literally had to like grab me by the collar one night and just say thank you, thank you, and you're reading on me being uncomfortable is 100% right. It's 100% me.
Well, I understand because I think I come from the same sentiments too, where the insecurities that I have, because like I said before, I told you in the beginning, it took me a long time to be comfortable doing this, which is the funny thing is that I've always wanted to do this. I've always wanted to do this sort of medium here where I can talk to somebody. And
you're knocking it out of the park. You are.
Oh, I appreciate that. You make me feel very uncomfortable as you say that.
I know. And you know what? You did it to me. I'm a dude. No, when I said that, when you reach out and you're like, hey, I would love, I was like, that's great because we follow each other on Instagram and I know your work and we've met before. And it's like, I have been watching. I watch a lot of stuff.
Well, as I'm talking to you right now, I said to you before, I love the fact that you have been very upfront with your with a lot of the issues that you've been dealt with and how you've handled that. And you've been pretty upfront about it. So I don't mean to rehash this again, but this is the part where I take away the most from the conversations I have, because I like to hear where people's thought process are, where they were before, where they are now, and what they look forward to in the future, because that to me is way more interesting, listen to the person's journey. Not to say that I don't enjoy your comment, I do, but hearing what led up to that is usually the most interesting part for me than the actual work in itself. The work is just the icing on the cake, but what led up to that moment is really the most interesting part, because that's where you're going to learn the most about the person. That's why I enjoy these long form conversations that I'm having with people.
And I think that people do enjoy that. I mean, there's a reason why behind the scenes director commentary, people will buy the DVD, the Blu-ray, just because there's a different, whatever, behind the scenes or whatever it might be. And I think that we find value in knowing like, hey, I knew this rapper, this musician before he blew up, like I know this comedian while he was still doing bar shows or whatever it might be. I think that is human nature. And, people find value in watching this. So this might not have a lot of views today, but somewhere down the line, like, oh, check this video out from a year ago, 2 years ago, whatever it might be. People find value in those things.
That's what I was telling somebody too a while back, that I hope that they would come if there's a period in time, like for me, like talking to you and Glenn, there, the way comedy is right now, Glenn is, is working on his next special. You're getting back into the routine again and trying to develop your comedy act here. But, it's a period in time of certain genres of art, if you will, that I find interesting, because I've said it before with a lot of other people that I've talked to. I learn a lot more about the industry listening to these stories from the individuals that share it. Like,
Yeah.
we talked about Ari Shafir's 3-hour seminar, if you will, about what it takes to be a comedian, but on the business side of it.
Yep.
That was one of the most educational videos I've ever seen and heard, because I didn't know 90% of what he was explaining there. But who's going to really listen to a 3-hour seminar of him talking about buying clothes, especially now, with all the comments he's made last year. But it's like, but despite that, there's a lot you can take from that, but most people won't take the time to consider it, to look into that.
I think like life is just that, overarching, and everything is in that. Like, you can do all the research and it's good because you're now putting points on the map, but you still have to take that journey. Like The Hobbit, right? Oh, nobody just walks in and out of Mordor. You go, okay, good to know. That's a point, but you still got to get there and do the thing, right? And listen to Ari Shafir's 3 hours. Some of it is applicable. I've applied a lot of it. There's some things where you go, oh, that's outdated, or that doesn't apply, or the thing, but you have to get there to make that decision. And I think that only comics, you and only comedians have actually listened to that, because it really was a seminar.
Yeah, I mean, I respect comedians for what they do, because like filmmaking, like any sort of art, if you will, it's not an easy thing to do. It's very difficult, and it's like I think people take for granted, when you go to a comedy show, you're doing your open mic, maybe 5 minutes, whatever the case may be. That's art being crafted right in front of you. They're trying something out. You're looking at a car being put together, and people are like, oh, it's just so boring. Oh yeah, but wait till you see the final product, and you're like, oh my God, it's amazing. But you saw that journey. Oh, but I just found it to be kind of boring. I just wanted to see the final results. That's who I avoid trying to now I wouldn't say impress, but that's why I avoid trying to show this here, because it's a very slow process, but those who appreciate it and understand it, I think will last longer than most other people who look at it and say, oh, I love the pretty pictures. Yeah, I get it. But, learn what it took to make those pretty pictures in the first place. I think those are people who will outlast everybody else in the industry. Those are the ones who I think will tend to outshine the other person, if you will.
Yeah, and I think that what I realize, especially now, is people have seen so many comedy specials, but have never been into a comedy club or a comedy show.
No.
And they don't understand a lot of you're seeing a final product as opposed to a living product. And I think that the way we consume comedy is different. That's why I was perfectly fine with doing my album the way that I did it. It was because I knew that everyone was going to watch it at their house by themselves. So I wanted to have the cadence and the presentation of like, I'm literally talking to you because it's just me and you. It's 3:00 in the morning. It's just me and you. And
sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
Yeah.
You said 3:00 in the morning. I think your Boston accent just came out right there. Sorry.
Yeah, three cocks in the morning, 3 cocks. I don't know what you're doing at your house, but this is what we're doing.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I thought it was hilarious.
And and I think that the way you do comedy in an arena or a theater or a comedy club or a dive bar or empty black box theater, it's all different. And you really, if you've only seen theater shows and then you go to a comedy club, only 200 people, like it's a different experience. And that's a lot of the feedback. You go, well, I mean, he just wasn't funny the whole time. And you're like, what do you mean the whole time? What does that even mean? So I just try to present my comedy to literally whatever the audience is. If it's 10 of us, it's 10 of us. If it's 300 of us, if it's just me speaking into the microphone, I just have to address it. Like if I did my podcast and I'm like, hey, everybody, what's going on? You'd be like, who fucking talks like that?
Yeah, I know. That's why I don't do intros. I mean, I have the intro for the show, but I don't do like, hey guys, today I got Loy. I tried doing that. The very first episode that I did with David Michael Latt, I did that.
Yeah.
And when I saw it, I was like, this looks so fucking stupid. So I just cut that out. And it's just him like, how are you doing? I'm like, yeah, I'm doing well. And that's where it picked up from there. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to stick with that format because I forgot who I was telling this to, but I liken this to like us walking into a conversation. We're talking, you're in the middle of conversation. You don't know what the hell they're talking about, but it sounds interesting. That's how I like the show to start off here.
and people really want to be talked to and not talked at.
Yeah.
And I think that we are just so used to, because we see so many YouTube videos, hey guys, in today's episode we're gonna do XYZ, and you go, oh, he did it and he's got 100,000 views, maybe I do that. And what kind of asshole would I be? Like, hey, do you have any recommendations on you have any advice? Like, yeah, you should do an intro. What kind of asshole would I be?
I would probably laugh. That's the funniest thing you said all night.
Yeah, and you did it, and it's, you know, I don't know. I just think
well, you know, here to kind of piggyback off what you're saying, I'm gonna go back on you with your podcast, because I like what you do a lot, actually, and it's very hard for me to really be engaged with somebody who is not with another partner, because I initially the initial idea that I had for the show was going to be me with somebody else and we're going to be co-hosts, and then I strayed away from that idea. But I like what you're doing with whenever you're on doing your podcast, because there's something unique about your approach that for me I found I engage with here, because like I said before, you're open, you're pretty straightforward, but there is a certain quirkiness about your sense of humor that I connect with, which is why I think, you know, in my opinion, you are a very good comedian. So, I mean, I'm not sure if that's something that you had developed throughout the years, or if that's something you kind of just picked up on and just ran with it. But I mean, I'm curious to see how that was started for you when you first got into that.
So one of the big things, I started that because I started the podcast predicated on the fact that, well, the whole setup, me just talking for a half hour, was the fact that I couldn't get consistent hosts, like co-hosts. And it was like everyone would just flake, and then my schedule and all this. And I was like, hey, you know what? Comedy is the next level to where I should be at, is being able to tell jokes for 30 minutes by myself. So I kind of just said, well, 25, 30 minutes, here we go. And at the beginning, it was a stretch, and I'm sure it's horrific. I refuse to go back and look at those episodes.
You don't like to go visit your stuff?
As I edit the video portion of it, I look at it, and I will look back at the last couple weeks or last couple months, but I can't imagine what I would have looked at or what it would have looked like 5 years ago. Okay. Jesus, like that sounds horrific. Because part of comedy is finding your voice and finding like, hey, this is what works for you and this is what you're comfortable with. And I think that when you first start out with anything, it's like, oh, what is everybody else doing? Let me try to do that.
Right. So, but I mean, like, you don't ever go back to revisit some of your old stuff again? Like, because I know we talked about that you don't have that. I couldn't find much of your comedic acts, but I mean, do you ever go back and revisit any of your old stuff at all to just see, let's see where I started it to where I'm at now?
When when I'm having a great day, I go, hey, let me just humble myself just a little bit. Like, I'll have a good episode and go, oh, I feel good about that. That was a solid 30 minutes. That's good. And then here, let me just scroll down. Yeah, you're good. Tell your wife I said hi.
Loy says hi, by the way, babes. She says hi back.
You know, like I said, I was just like, when I need to be humbled, I'll go 3-4 years back and just click it, skip somewhere in the middle and just be like, oh, you're rambling. Cool. Yeah. Don't ramble.
You cringe when you watch that?
I do. Actually, I just started doing the video portion of it not too long ago.
Oh, do you ever plan on doing like, cause you do reaction videos. You ever plan on doing like my reaction video of my very first video? You ever think about doing that?
I've thought about that, but I think that reacting to my own stuff would be what I wanted to do. And I think one of the original thoughts was like, okay, I'll do a reaction video of a song. And then like at some point I will do a reaction video on just the comments of it.
Okay.
So I'll kind of like show it and then a little bit and just be okay. So douchebag 99 says whatever, whatever it is, and just read it and just do reaction to that. But I don't think I'm big enough to where anyone cares.
I see where you're going with this. Okay.
So, you know, there's some reaction videos that get 100,000 views and you
Mhm.
go, okay, you know that is more than just the audience of the band. It's actually their audience. And I think I'll start doing stuff like that. But one of the things that I actually think about doing is doing reaction videos to other comedians' sets. So, you know, find a set that's on YouTube and just
that's interesting.
kind of break stuff down without being too much of a dick about it, but just being like, oh, I see, and then try to punch it up. And
So you're leaning more towards like reacting to other people's work in terms of like the comedy side of it here. But I mean, but you're not really curious at all to try looking at your own material and
oh yeah, okay, that's how we got here. I do want to do that, but like when my audience is self-sufficient, when I know that I'm already getting 10-20,000 views on just my name alone.
I see what you're getting. Okay, that actually makes sense.
Yeah, because right now it's like you can see my reaction video numbers and you can see my podcast numbers for the video portion of it, and you go, oh, there's a huge discrepancy. But when those numbers are sufficient, you go, okay, here we go. Let's go back 4 years from today. And you go,
but are you planning on putting up some new content on the channel anytime soon?
I do. I just trying to be a responsible adult, you know, like trying to, ladies and gentlemen, there's things called priorities. And if you're familiar with this, keep on listening.
I know.
But, you know, priorities.
Yeah, I know what you're getting at. It's a very hard thing to balance because I know that you know, in one of your other videos you mentioned before that you're working full time too. Is that right? Yeah. So and you talked pretty in depth about, you know, that experience as well. Because I also work full time as well. But you know, when you're talking about priorities, is it mainly because of, you know, work scheduling or work and your private life?
I would say that throughout my entire life, before comedy, I pursued acting at a very young age, and all of my work, all of my jobs were played second fiddle. Like I would call out, I would do whatever I needed to do to get me to the audition, to get me to where I needed to be. And at 40 now, I realize like, oh, there's some things in life that I need to focus on. Like, hey, make sure I show up to work on time, make sure my numbers are right. What about a family? What about a house? What about things? And I don't know if I talked about it on the podcast, but it's like, okay, this is a timeline. I need to focus on these things for this next timeline.
If you did. I'm trying to remember if you did it off the top of my head.
I don't know if that's something that I want to release, but I think being a storyteller of sorts, I'm cavalier with being, I guess I'm just cavalier with being cavalier, you know.
Cavalier being cavalier, I like that.
Yeah, you're just kind of like, oh, well, I mean, here, buddy, you know, and if my buddy were to call and be like, hey, what's going on with that? You know, that's just conversation between me and him. But I don't really try to put too much people's information out there. Even if I have to change the story a bit.
It's all good. I'm going to leave you to it so you can do your thing. But hey, listen, I do appreciate you giving the time to do this here because we've been over this for 2 hours now.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of fun, way better than I anticipated. And I'm so glad that you fulfilled my expectation, because I was hoping that it would be great, and it was beyond great for me. So I appreciate your time, man.
Thank you very much for reaching out. I've been, like I said, I've been following the things that you've been doing for a while, and yeah, man, you're good peoples, man. I really do appreciate
that.
you.
You really are a good person as well. So I hope one day we get to do this again. And yeah, anytime
have a drink. Actually have a drink,
an actual drink, yes, in the same room, so we can do this again. But I appreciate your time, man. And you know, anytime you want to. If there's something you want to do and you want me to participate in, reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to help out.
Absolutely. I do look forward to doing some more work with NRW and just kind of be more in that fold. So
sure, no problem, man. Absolutely. I'm looking forward to that as well whenever the opportunity arises. So until then, you take care of yourself and stay classy.
Thanks, champ. You're so cool.